Hey everyone, just wanted to wish a happy Thanksgiving to everyone who's celebrating. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been supporting us for all these years.
Just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's been supporting us. Happy Thanksgiving.
All right, back to the episode now. Academic freedom and no firewall. That pretty much defines the entire episode we have this week for you. So I had Ashish Desai who spoke about what's the real world of AWS or just working in cloud these days for a lot of security architects out there versus what we talk about online. And I think the quote that he just shared earlier about from his university, which is, hey, there should be academic freedom and no firewalls for knowledge. And that's kind of what we're trying to unravel in this. So Ashish and I know it's another Ashish and Ashish, but Ashish and I spoke about the fact that what traditional architecture used to be, what traditional IT used to be, how much of it was translated into the cloud, and how much of it is basically us drinking the Kool-Aid of the big giants of the world doing very mature cloud security versus what the reality is. We even spoke about, for folks, and I'm going to age myself as I say this, for folks who have been through the ServiceNow wave, that was before DevOps. Yes, for people who are probably new to this world, where before cloud, before DevOps, there was another wave where everything was turning into ServiceNow. Basically, I'm looking for some kind of a centralized inventory management, and ServiceNow were the answers. So we kind of went down that rabbit hole as well, spoke about what kind of playbook should work and what kind of playbook would not work in the cloud. Then towards the tail end of the episode, we also spoke about what should cloud security architects look for in their new role, what kind of skill set they should work on to be successful for the next 10, 15 years in the cloud space, and whether traditional frameworks that we use for architecture or not having enough understanding of the IT foundational pieces are sometimes necessary to do the job right. The most important thing is to have developer experience with a focus to the business outcome at mind. If you're new to the cloud security architecture world, definitely listen to this episode to get an insight for what used to be and what it is now. And if you are a person who has been in this space for a long time, I think you would also enjoy this conversation just because there would be a lot of things that you would have relate to, because kind of like myself, you've been in the IT industry for a long time, done cybersecurity when it was called information security or infosec for a lot of people. And as much as it shows our age, but I think this is a safe space to talk about what waves we went through and what some of the transitions have they been successful or they have not been successful. As always, if you know someone who's trying to be a cloud security architect or wants to know more about that field, definitely share the episode with them, or definitely share the episode on your social network so others can find out about it. It also helps us find more new people who we can help out as well. So I definitely appreciate you doing that. And if you're listening to the episode for the second, third, or fourth time, I would definitely recommend subscribing, leaving a rating or review on iTunes and Spotify. It really helps us find more guests that we can help. And it also helps us validate what we are doing is a topic that you're interested in as well. So thank you so much for doing that. And thank you everyone who posted a review or rating last week. We ended up topping charts for US, UK, Australia, and some parts of Europe as well. And I think this week in South Africa as well. So thank you so much for doing that. Another thing I want to call out is we are releasing Cloud Security Villains. And this is a very exciting project for me and for Shilpi. We kind of worked on this for a few months before reInvent, because we are heading to reInvent. It's next week. So after the Thanksgiving week, we are off to AWS reInvent. And if you're attending, definitely come and say hello. I would love to come and take pictures and hand you out special swags, which are Cloud Security Villain swags that we're going to hand out only at the AWS reInvent. And I'll leave a link for the videos here as well, so you get a sense of what it is. It has never been done in cloud security, so I'm super excited about this project and what it means for all the cloud security advocates that listen to this conversation. And I'm hoping one day I can feature all of you onto the cloud security advocate space that I'm trying to create over here. We all love talking about cloud security. We all love learning about cloud security. We all love sharing about cloud security. So why shouldn't all cloud security advocates unite? So that's pretty much the hint. I will let you check out the video for the rest and the related blog articles, but I would love to hear more about what you think about cloud security villains, and feel free to share that as well, or feel free to reach out on LinkedIn and Twitter or other social media to share what you feel and how we can improve it, and any other villains that you can think of that we should include in our growing space of cloud security villains. Thank you for supporting us, being with us throughout this year, and jumping on the live streams and leaving us reviews and ratings. So thank you so much. And it is Thanksgiving weekend as well. I just want to give a shout out to everyone and say thank you. It really was not something that we would think we would have another year of, but I'm really super grateful that this has become possible, and it would not have been possible without all your support. So thank you so much for supporting us and sharing us with your friends, family who are trying to learn about cloud security. in our mission to democratize cloud security. I really appreciate the support all of you are showing us. And I just want to say thank you. That's pretty much it. So thank you. I'm really grateful all the support that you show me, Shilpi, and all the content that we create on our YouTube channel, LinkedIn, everywhere. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving week and weekend with a family and friends if you're celebrating. Even if you're not celebrating, I hope you take a moment just to be grateful for what you have in front of you. And yeah, just share the love. Pretty much it. Enjoy this episode with Ashish Desai, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.
By bringing developers and security together, you don't have to choose between speed and security. Develop fast, stay secure.
How are you going?
I'm doing good.
Maybe I'll start off with the obvious for people who do not know you. What was your foray into information security or cybersecurity?
I used to manage computers as a student in my university, and we believed in academic freedom and no firewalls. So all the machines are connected directly on the internet, and so the fun starts. And so that was basically, building stuff really fast. And this is before days of SSH. So if you can understand where passwords were flying in the clear on the network, sniffing was normal. There were no switch networks per se.
Wow.
Living the wild ride. And so, when someone says, oh, DevOps and network security, I'm like, guys, you guys have, you ever talked to the dinosaurs?
I love the whole the philosophy. I'm going to use that.
Universities in the US have this philosophy of academic freedom. And so
Yeah.
one of the things we took that to the whole nother level, which is like, why should your network be protected with firewalls? Like, keep it out open,
Yeah. Well, we're already starting us off with something which is internet versus reality. Like on the internet, every security person out there should be firewall everywhere. I love how we're starting off with already on that. I'm going to start with the first one because you've been in different roles within your career. Cloud security architect one, which I haven't covered for the AWS security month so far. So what are some of the roles and responsibilities of a cloud security architect? You can focus primarily on AWS or broader multi-cloud, but how would you describe roles and responsibilities for that?
Sure. You have to step back and depending on like which company type you're working with. So older companies, Fortune 1000s have had on-prem data centers for eons, and then they're stepping into the cloud. And then you have smaller startups which are only in the cloud and don't have on-prem, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of went with the first because I was in a large financial institution. And so one of the challenges is like, okay, so this is how we kind of secured our corporate data centers. And how do we now do something similar in the cloud?
Yeah.
And one of the first things you realize is the cloud is actually a lot more secure and a lot more flexible than on-prem data centers, right? And so I think the biggest challenge, if anyone wants to, was a traditional, IT person in a large company, and now they're stepping into the cloud. I think the best piece of advice I would give you is you need to throw your entire playbook out the door. Like, you need to basically start from scratch, figure out what each provider offers as best of breed, and then try to use that as you decide to move workloads into the cloud. And if you do that and you can throw your whole playbook out, you will be far more successful. If you try to drag the playbook into the cloud, you are going to fail miserably.
This kind of definitely ties back to the academic freedom and no firewall conversation that we just had just before this. There's one school of thought that is that everything they've learned so far in your on-premise world, you should be able to bring that over to the cloud. But at the same time, you're saying that, well, not everything probably should come over. I mean, the foundational pieces of how do I do networking versus how do I do identity access management, I don't suppose they would change. What's the difference between on-premise and cloud? Or I guess in our version of what's internet versus reality between on-premise versus cloud?
They absolutely do. If you think about identity is just a row in a database. That's the easiest way to explain it to you. Whether it's on-prem or in the cloud or wherever, right? An identity is just a row in a database.
Yeah.
The authorization is a bunch of more rows in a different table. That's all it is. There is no black magic to it.
I mean, at the foundation level, that's right. Yeah.
At the foundation level. Now, there's one interesting difference between on-prem and in the cloud. And the fundamental difference is that in the cloud, we have resource policies. So here's a human, here's your data. In traditional data space, the human would have an identity and permissions, roles, like what can they do? But the data side had no policies. The enforcement was more like from left to right. In the cloud now, there's notion of resource policies. That's the game changer. So the resource itself can define like, hey, I want to stay protected and I can only have these characters read me. Nobody else can read me. So I think that's the first fundamental difference that people have to understand. The second is that if you just take AWS as an example, there are, I think if you multiply the number of services times permission bits, it's like at like 6,000 unique permissions.
Wow. Okay.
So now you say, well, okay, I'm going to do fine-grained access control because that's what every security book says. Good luck. That's all. I'll tell you what happens. So if you look in the corporate world, they're like, well, we're going to define an Active Directory group for every little thingy. So we're going to create an AD role for blah. So every IAM role has a corresponding AD role. At some point, the AD guy is going to come and say, yo, bud, like you're creating too many groups. You're slowing down AD replication. Then on the right side, someone's going to come and say, listen, you're creating too many IAM roles. Like I can't use my brains and figure out what is what. And so there's this constant tension between the two. And there is no right answer. There's absolutely no right answer. Like the one difference between the data center and cloud is cloud has the beauty of Cloud Trail. Every single permission action gets logged. We did not have that in the data center to a certain degree. So the philosophy I give is like, hey, keep it open in the cloud because CloudTrail tells you exactly what the person did. And we can go back and hunt the person down and, do whatever we need to do.
I'm glad we're starting the podcast on the foundation or the video as well. I love how the academic freedom and no firewall thing. I'm going to come back to that because what you said, and we just touched on identity access management. We haven't even spoken about all the other bits that kind of go around the whole switch network, or even the part where people still use Windows XP 2003 servers in their on-premise, and none of that can come into the cloud space as well.
That's not true.
Wait, really? In on-premise?
There are companies who are running Windows 2003 servers in AWS right now.
In AWS? 2003 servers. Is that even like, because, okay, that's another, there you go, another online internet versus the reality. Because you know how a lot of the conversation that a lot of people would have, the reason for moving to cloud is it forces you to move to a higher version of Windows or whatever operating system that you're working on. Because, well, after a point, they stop supporting. But then, so are we saying you can have, I don't know, XP in Vista as well? Or just 2003 server is probably the only example that you know of?
An EC2 node is just an x86 emulator at the end of the day. If you have bits that run x86 instruction set, it'll run anything.
Wait, so, okay, wow. Because that technically means you can run anything like XP server, like x86 is that old.
x86 is the first Intel instruction set, 8086. There are two things. So I'm kind of simplifying a lot. So AMIs think of it as an ISO image. So technically you can do that. The challenge is if you have an old ISO image, it doesn't have some of the device driver bits to talk to the hypervisor. Right. So that's where things fail. Amazon gives you bare metal EC2. There's a notion of bare metal EC2. And so you can do some lot of crazy stuff there. So all the high frequency trading, all those characters use that because they're like, we don't trust everybody. Like it's our crap. But there's a second part to it. So if you heard of VMware ESX, that's right, so most on-prem data centers run ESX VMware. Guess what? Now they support VMware running on Amazon. And it's a whole cool product category, and you can literally say vMotion. So I don't know if you heard the notion vMotion, which is like, yo, my server's running in this data center here. Please move it here. It's one click, literally one click. And it starts moving the bits, and then there's barely a 2-second late switch where it then flips the IP address and it just goes live. And you can do that today.
What? So that's another myth that has been broken for me between on-premise and all cloud. What we started off this conversation with as well, where cloud is more secure.
It's more secure out of the box. This is my biggest beef with everyone. They're like, oh, cloud is insecure. It's out on the internet. Okay, I get it. It's out on the internet. But the minute you create an Amazon account and a VPC, by default, it's secure. Like people just don't get it. It's a 10 dot address. It's not routable. Like you can't even get in yourself. Like it's so hard to get in.
Actually, to your point, by default, security groups don't allow for anything inbound, outbound. You have to put the rules to make it even communicate with them.
It's an explicit allow. That's right.
I want to come back to the whole, how do we kind of do it in the real world? But I'm definitely enjoying this part where what people say on the internet versus what really happens. I love the EC2 example that we went down the path of. Are there other things that people talk about? Vulnerability management, even the fact that everyone is CI/CD using GitHub and Terraform and everything. What do you see in your day-to-day?
I don't know where you heard people use CI/CD and Terraform. That is like completely inaccurate. I have seen people, the GUI, like start a machine, pick an AMI, do it.
Wait, that's more common than using
people,
IAC.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Okay. So CI/CD, is that a thing?
It's definitely a thing for the super mature organizations who believe in it, who want to have a reproducible system. But on-prem data centers were not reproducible. Yes, the advanced ones use Ansible and Chef, but at the end of the day, they would spin up a Windows server, they'll go in manually and set up IIS web server, which has been the biggest grief of all security holes. This was misconfigured. And guess what? The same person now is going to be doing your cloud work. You didn't magically send him to school and say, hey, bud, like learn CI/CD, learn Git, and when you come back, like this is how you're going to do it. It's an organic transition.
Right. This is kind of similar to the transition a lot of people have between even starting with what was the virtual machine game as well. A lot of people are just used to the fact that, I can log into the server directly and I can manage. I remember the IP address to be 1234. That is the web server. 55678 is like app server. I remember those days as well. And I don't know how many of those folks would have been given extra training to, hey, this is how cloud works. This is how you go into it. I normally go to conferences. There's definitely a pocket of people who are in that advanced category, to your point, and maybe it might be like one or two business units in an organization, but not the entire organization. Do you see the same as well?
Yep, absolutely. So 80% of a company is like old school. 20% is like way advanced. And so you have this massive tension of you have this cloud team that's trying to support everyone in the company to go up.
Yeah.
And so how do you upskill people?
Yeah.
I'll give you a crazy example, absolutely crazy example. So we had someone in one of the prior companies I worked in, and they wrote code for the mainframe.
Right, okay.
And mainframe is kind of like single-threaded, if you will. It's like just brute force it.
That's pretty much it.
Right? Like it's a super fast CPU, you just brute force it. And so they're like, hey, we're going to rewrite this code in Java. So they rewrote in Java. And it was still running on-prem data center, right? And so they're like, we're going to write in Java, and then we're going to containerize it. Awesome. And so then they did that, and then they put it on our platform. And this is, we use a thing called, I think it was called Cloud Foundry. So it's like pre-Kubernetes days. So just imagine it's Kubernetes on-prem. And they put that app there, and it was working great. Everything's working fine. Single replica. Okay.
Wow.
And so we're like, okay, now we're going to do a platform upgrade. So we're going to tell Kubernetes, please upgrade yourself.
Yeah.
So what Kubernetes does is slowly, knocks down your container, builds a new node, brings you back up.
Yeah.
And you can't control how long it's going to take. All you say is once you say go, right, it's going to take hours. So this app was super critical. It went down because it's one replica.
Oh.
Right? Wow. So you know what they told us? They're like, you can't do that. You need to inform us when you do a platform upgrade. We're like, but we can. But if a platform upgrade takes like 44 hours, what are you going to do? That's like 2 days.
That's right. Yeah.
And so we're like, hey, why don't you go 2 replica? Guess what? They couldn't do 2 replica because it was a stateful app.
Oh my God. Wait.
And guess what? I am seeing this mistake every day now in Kubernetes today. People are deploying single replica deployments in Kubernetes, and no one has told them, no, you cannot do that.
Wait, so is Bare Metal or in one of those managed Kubernetes as well?
Even managed, yes, right? You can do a deployment with one replica. It doesn't.
And
no
when
one
you say
stops
one
you.
replica is, so just for context for people who may not know how Kubernetes works, one replica, do you mean like a database, which is one replica, or a cluster?
No, so if you build a web app, it would spin up one instance of the container versus 2. So typically you do more than one, so you can build load balancing and right. But the problem is to do that, your app needs to be either stateless, or if it's stateful, then the state is in some backend database, and then each of the replicas can go update the state, right? Really fast, right?
Yeah.
But people don't know how to write these apps. It's like 2022, and people still don't know how to write these apps. So what they do instead is they'll just write it this way, right? And they're like, hey, look, I containerized my app. Like I did the best thing. I have CI/CD. It's like awesome. Like, no, but like that's great. But now you held up the entire platform because now the platform can't upgrade without taking you down.
Wow. Okay. Is this because, maybe a better way to put this is like, so is this a challenge only with monolithic apps? Like mainframe is obviously an example of a monolithic app.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
to your point, modern applications.
Monolithic or stateful apps, basically.
Stateful apps.
Yeah, if it's stateful and you didn't think about state between two running processes, because the only way you can pass state information is keep it in the cookie. And so now when the browser sends the cookie to the other guy, like they know what state you were in.
Yeah.
But cookies can only take so much payload. So then what people do is like they dump more state information in Redis or a backend database.
Yeah.
But you have to design that. Like you can't just say, oh, I'm going to move my app and now magically it's stateful.
That's a good question because I've got someone from Amazon coming in talking about AWS EKS. So I'm going to ask this question about the replica thing as well. The point makes sense if you don't have another container looking at the state or managing the state separately, or it's like a DynamoDB kind of a state management or whatever, it definitely can't work. Another one that kind of a lot of people talk about is the whole ServiceNow approach from on-premise to cloud. How translatable is that to the cloud world? For people who were involved in that transition period where a lot of clouds were migrating, just before that, there was a wave of everything had to be ServiceNow in an organization, especially in enterprise. There's like before DevOps, before cloud, there was a wave of everything should be ServiceNow, or it's not in ServiceNow, CAB cannot happen. And you're like, oh, right, okay. And for context of people, for CAB is basically this is pre-deployment or pre-CI/CD deployment world where you have to go to Ashish, the CAB manager, and ask for permission for, hey, when can I put my production release in? Oh, actually, the only time you have is in a month's time. Come back to me in a month. So like that was very ServiceNow world. How did that translate over to the cloud world, in your opinion?
It depends on each company, as I said. If you want to bring your baggage of on-prem data center policies and practices to the cloud, you will fail miserably. If you say, I'm going to throw that playbook out and rethink how I'm going to do it in the cloud, you will be successful. And so every company I've worked at and talked to people, the first time they do cloud, they fail miserably because they just took the old playbook. And so they learn a little bit and they say, well, you know what, maybe we can like change our playbook and, try it differently. And they kind of succeed a little bit. And then they're like, screw this, we're going to go to version 3. And now we're going to just say, listen, screw the whole playbook, call it a day. So the ServiceNow example is a great example. So ServiceNow is an awesome virus. Like it's spread in every company. Like you cannot, like it's the best product in that sense. So you have to understand why ServiceNow occurred. And the reason ServiceNow occurred is because people are running servers in the data center. They were not labeled. People didn't know what the heck it was. When we had to decommission a rack to get capacity because, cooling was running out or AC was running out, like we didn't know who to reach out to and do that. That basically started the history of, we need a centralized inventory control. Let's use ServiceNow. Okay, awesome. That's an awesome idea. Made perfect sense, right? And so then people then build processes around that. Like, hey, we must have a approval flow. Like you want to create a new server, you need to talk to the CAB, as you said. The cloud changed that in the sense that I can click and I can get a server anytime.
That's right.
And so you can say, well, ServiceNow has a module that supports that. So you can go in ServiceNow and say, give me a server, and ServiceNow will talk to Amazon and give you a cloud an instance, and that's great. So if you want that route, that's great. But now, people like you come in and say, hey, you need to do CI/CD and DevOps and GitOps. Okay, so that just says, I just get my AWS creds and I go trigger the Terraform or CloudFormation, and it's going to give me all the servers I need. Oh, no, but you need to do ServiceNow. So now you go come up with a stupid hack, right? Say, yo, ServiceNow, please give me some servers. You wait, and then it does the provisioning. Now you got the servers. Now you go, after that, you run your CI/CD, whatever, to use those servers. So you just created more bureaucracy and you added more code. Now you're building an orchestration. You expected to build a ServiceNow orchestration so that you could follow the old way and then follow the new way.
Oh, as a lot of people call it the Vagile, the waterfall and agile combination of Vagile. That's pretty much.
Call it whatever you want, man. Now here's the scary part. So now let's say you go deploy our workloads. Elastic Machine MapReduce, right, on AWS, and there's equivalent in the other clouds. Or you deploy a Jenkins server worker slave combination. Well, There are people who deploy that where every build gets a new EC2 worker node. So that worker node lasts like 2 minutes.
Yep.
Same thing with EMR. You can define EMR tasks and it'll run for like 4 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
So past few companies I worked at, we used to go through like 20, 30,000 servers a day, right?
Oh.
You try and explain that to a ServiceNow person saying, yo, we're going to create 20,000 servers, right? And they're like, dude, no, you can't do that, man. Like we pay per record in ServiceNow. Like you need to slow down. Like, no, dude, that's a new way. Like, why do you need a inventory record in ServiceNow? My server died in 2 minutes. Like, well, that's a corporate policy. Yeah, but corporate policy did not say it has to be ServiceNow.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
You said it is ServiceNow. Corporate policy just says we must have inventory and we must have an audit log of what happened.
Yeah.
Right? Guess what? The audit log's there. It's CloudTrail. Right?
Yep.
The inventory is a point in time. You can go query Amazon and it'll tell you everything that's running.
Yeah.
Because the minute you queried, that data stale the next minute.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's what I mean by like, you really have to throw your entire playbook out the door. And if you don't, you will fail miserably.
Do you reckon with the whole native solutions that came out from Amazon, Azure, or all the cloud providers where, hey, use our CI/CD, don't use Jenkins, use our repository, don't use GitHub. I mean, everything should be in marketplace, for lack of a better word. In a lot of ways now, looking back, it almost feels like we were trying to bypass CAB in a lot of ways, because if it's in marketplace, you don't even see it. It doesn't even come in. It just comes as an AWS bill and you move on with your life. Do you reckon the native solutions ended up doing the same thing that people do with security? We bypassed CAB by just using marketplace or the services.
So you need to understand human philosophy and what drives each person to do their job. An average person in a company, their mission is to release a feature for a product and just do their job. Right? They don't care about all this bureaucracy.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
And so anything to speed up their workflow and bypass bureaucracy is going to happen. The notion of whether you use CI/CD and get repos or native services in Amazon or Azure, that's, again, right, it's irrelevant, right? The reason they do that is because people don't buy an enterprise GitHub license.
Yep.
I kid you not. Okay,
I know exactly
I'm
what you
dead
mean.
serious. Right? They're like, it's hey, GitHub enterprise license. Who's going to pay for it? Like which cost center should I charge it to? Oh, it's called the enterprise. The enterprise should pay for it and get a license for everybody. Oh, no, that's too expensive.
Yep. Yeah, I've been in those conversations where it's suddenly like there was such a stigma around going for GitHub Enterprise. You're like, but all of us use it. All of us are like literally deep into it. But hey, we can't afford the enterprise version. Because I know what you mean exactly. But let me put another spin to this as well. We've been kind of like ditching the old school world and the new school world as well. I want to give the audience another perspective for what it should look like in the new world as well. In terms of the cloud security architect role for people who may be trying to get into the field, or maybe existing cloud security architects in the AWS space, we obviously have said that ditch the playbook from the old school world. Is the role completely different in the cloud world for them? Like if I were to just someone start today in AWS as a cloud security architect, I've done an AWS certification. I know some services. I've done security architecture, the traditional security architecture before. What would you say? How would that role be in the new cloud world?
It's not really the new cloud world. I think it's just in general, in security. Like my perception has changed over time. And I think if I can impart this one wisdom to everyone, I think that'll make everyone successful. As an InfoSec practitioner, your job is to make the business unit successful.
Yeah.
That's it. Like if you can get the developer to put a feature out on the website in 1 day versus 1 month, you made that person successful, and that helped you get more revenue for the company, which then in turn paid your salary.
Yeah.
So that you got to have that mindset at the back. So now the next question is like, okay, so how do I make the person successful? And so the challenge with InfoSec person is like, yeah, you did all the certifications, blah, blah, blah. I tell you how to do the SGs, right? Did you sit side by side with the developer to see their pain point? because we have this layer of bureaucracy. Either you invented half of it or someone else, built some of it.
Yeah.
But did you experience the pain that the developer went through, right? And so one of the big challenges you'll realize very quickly is companies like Netflix and everyone are super successful because they have actually a developer experience team. They actually focus on who builds the tooling that the devs use so that they can fast deploy quickly. Most Fortune 500 companies don't have a DevEx group because they're like, dude, that's a cost center. Like, who the heck's going to pay for it? And so if you want to be a successful cloud security practitioner, the first thing I would say is like, go write the policies. But once a week, sit down, like actually sit down, do a screen share with the developer and see what heck they have to do to get their app out there. And then you will have some more sympathy to understand, like maybe you need to soften your stance or make things improvement, or this do checks and balances behind the scenes. Because one of the things I tell people, like, listen, we have CloudTrail, we have inventory and all the good stuff in cloud. Why do you care if the guy's malicious? 99% of people are not malicious. They just want to do their job.
Yeah.
Go analyze the logs and figure out what needs to be done so you can help them.
The world of cloud that we live in at the moment, you can transition. Well, actually, maybe another way to put this, was developer experience not a thing in on-premise?
No.
It wasn't?
No. So, but there was a lot of that. Like the product maturity was lacking.
Yeah, right.
We just didn't have products.
To your point then, this is probably the first time we have the opportunity to have that much automation. And I mean, in a lot of ways, I think I heard someone say this before. Now, even security teams are turning into engineering teams. They're just not like, hey, I'm a firewall. To quote you earlier, we're not a firewall.
Absolutely.
So we're an engineering team as well. The developers tend to be engineers as well. I mean, the traditional sysadmin is now a DevOps engineer. And when I started in IT, people were ever thinking that, IT people would be engineers. Like, they were engineers.
Well, more than that, we did not expect a firewall engineer to learn no Python.
Yeah.
Right? That's the easiest way to explain it to it, right? And so one of the things that I try to let people know is like, listen, you want to be successful in your job the next decade, learn some programming. Python is the easiest. Start with that. If you want to be super good, use Go. But between those two, you can pretty much do everything in every single cloud provider at this point.
Yeah, good point as well. I think a lot of the roles are changing. Would you say a cloud security architect needs to know how to code as well, especially in an enterprise context? Could you elaborate? When I say about this thing, a lot of people are like, well, that should not be the case. So I'm curious as to what scenarios you see would be applicable where someone would have to code as a cloud security architect.
Okay, so let me give you the easiest dumb example. So I want to find out all EC2 nodes which are older than 1 year running across all my thousands of accounts.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a security risk.
That's right.
So how are you going to find that information?
Yeah, but a lot of people would say that's more of a cloud security engineer rather than an architect, unless you're architecting the cloud in the first place. Would you agree?
No. How is an architect going to architect stuff if he doesn't know how the existing state of system is?
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. So if you're talking about an existing application, not a new application,
No, I'll just simplify further, right? You switch jobs. You went from company A to company B.
Yeah.
Right? As a cloud security architect, right? The first thing you need to know is what's the lay of the land? What's my deployment, right? How many accounts I have? How many servers I have, right? How are you going to know that information, right?
Oh, actually, even the one question that I asked every time I had moved jobs was also, what are our public-facing endpoints? No one had a straight answer for that as well. You still have to write a code, and I think I ended up making a script that I had to run every time I joined a new company. Well, like, what are my public-facing DNSs? Because they're just like 400 plus Route 53, but are they S3 buckets that are open to the internet? Are there RDSs that are open to the internet? Like, there is definitely a lot of questions that you would ask on your new job, which unfortunately no one has a true answer to. Even the ownership, for that matter, is sometimes hard to find. Who owns this particular tag on AWS?
Yeah. Ownership, I don't care about ownership first. First, I care about inventory. So now you basically have two choices. You either have some inventory tool that was deployed before you came in, ServiceNow, Wiz, CloudAware, you name it, like the tons of inventory tools. So they have the state of affairs. So now what happens? They dump out pages and pages of information.
Yep.
So what are you going to do? You're going to create an Excel spreadsheet, and then you're going to pivot on it.
Yep.
You just programmed. Creating a pivot chart in Excel is programming. Or I could download that data as a CSV and write some Python code, which is what 99% of people do.
Would you say the framework for how you design and architecture has also changed? A lot of people have I can't remember the name of the frameworks anymore. TOGAF, and there's a few frameworks that a lot of people use as a benchmark for, hey, whenever you do a security architecture, these are normally great templates or frameworks to start off with. Has that also changed in the cloud world?
Yes and no. It depends on the age group you ask that question to.
Oh, okay.
If you ask a college graduate or someone, in their early 30s, mid 40s, they're like, what are you talking about? What is TOGAF? Right? Like, what's UML? Or what's Visio, for crying out loud? Let's use Lucid Charts or Draw.io, any of these new gen tools. I don't think a lot of these frameworks have kept up with the modern world. So if you look at TOGAF and Archimate and open group, if you look at the iconography, they just have a server. Like, there is no Lambda, there is no EBS, right? and so it's like, listen, folks, as I said, throw your old playbook away. Use Lucid Charts or Draw.io, call it a day.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, stupid. Because one of the things you have to understand is, like, as you're going to hire more people off the market who come from AWS background, they're used to those toolings. And then you come in there, and you bring them in and you say, oh, you're going to use the TOGAF framework. And they're like, what are you talking about?
Because I think the other one was the SAPSA framework as well. SAPSA, TOGAF. People used to get certified in that as well. I remember. I was like one of those things that, I'm TOGAF certified or I'm SAPSA certified. Like kind of like the CISSP certification nowadays. Wait, this is an interesting perspective. What would be the skill set that you would require to, say, do your job effectively as a cloud security architect? Because to your point, you mentioned the programming part, learn one language, because when you transition from one place you may have worked in for 10 plus years, know exactly everything in and out, for whatever reason you moved on to another company, you have to figure out what the lay of the land is. You can't just ask questions and hopefully receive an up-to-date information. What are some of the other things you feel people should know in the space to become a good cloud security architect, considering that traditional frameworks don't play a good role anymore?
So I think the most important thing I would say is try to leverage as much native tooling that the provider offers. So for example, in AWS, they have notion of parameter store and secrets manager, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we need to use Vault. That's our corporate standard. Like, why? Why do you need to use Vault? Because what they don't realize is that the minute you use Vault, now you created two sets of RBAC. Vault has its own RBAC, and then Secrets Manager has its own RBAC. So now to deploy one app, you have to manage two different RBACs.
Actually, that's a good point. The reason why I thought, and why I guess most people thought they're going for Terraform as well as HashiCorp Vault, was to solve the whole cloud agnostic multi-cloud problem. Like, so I see you rolling your eyes already. So maybe to your point, then, if I were to just stick with cloud native, and if I were just only working in AWS, maybe that would work in that context. And I can question the fact of why do I care about Vault? But when we complicate scenarios, which most companies out there are multi-cloud these days, very few, especially the bigger the enterprise, the more cloud data. People have gone way beyond your standard Azure, Google Cloud, and AWS. They're now Oracle, OpenStack, private cloud. Like, there's just basically, for lack of a better word, it's just spaghetti of clouds now in most organizations.
There's a reason for all that madness. So first, just break down basic principles. When someone deploys an app in one cloud provider, odds are they don't deploy the exact same app in another cloud provider.
Yeah, that's true.
It's business unit A deploys in cloud A, business unit B deploys in cloud B.
That's right. Okay? Yeah.
So why do you care about being cloud agnostic? Your app ain't running on both sides. Second, you show me one Terraform config that deploys to multiple clouds. The answer is 0.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The first flag is a provider, AWS. Dude, what do you think that happens, man? There's a reason why Hashi can't do that. There's no tool in the world that does that. So there's a baloney that says, I have IAC, it's cloud neutral. No. Like, read behind the covers. It's not, right? And so I think, the faster you make a decision that, using native services, the faster your velocity of deployment occurs.
Yeah.
Right? The less, hair pulling you will do, because there's less integration work you have to do, right? You can open a service ticket with Amazon, you get an answer really quickly. The minute you say, I have Hashi or something else, they're like, not my problem, right? So I think that with the biggest value add, I would say, right, is try to stick with as much native as possible.
Yep.
Because at the end, it's velocity that matters. If you don't have velocity, everything is irrelevant.
So to your point, then I'm with you on the whole cloud native, and I've always been very supportive of this as well. A lot of the conversation that I have about the cloud agnostic or multi-cloud challenge is also from operational side of security as well, where yep, you and I made the call. We've built cloud native applications, but the SOC team, I'm sure you'll go back to the first principle on this as well. The CSPMs of the world, they're all going, oh, we are your one-stop for security across all cloud service providers. And that's the whole notion, because your AWS would not give you cybersecurity insights from Azure or Google Cloud, although Google Cloud is trying to do the other way around. What are your thoughts on the operational side of security as well then? Because that's also kind of like a security architect has to decide where that goes.
Yeah, so the best suggestion there is make sure that whatever tooling you buy supports all the different clouds. But again, you have to keep the fundamental first principles, which is each cloud has its own control layer, control plane, and you need to work within that framework. So yes, all SOC teams will say, listen, man, like I only have like 3 people. Like I need a single pane of glass.
Yeah.
Excellent. Go buy any of the various tools out there. The most important thing I have learned over the last 5 years is any tool you buy, it better have a search bar, because that is the number one value prop that I have seen that is crazy good. And so my benchmark is if your search doesn't work, you don't even qualify at my premise. Like I should be able to type in an instance ID, a DNS name, an IP address, an IAM role name, and it should basically find that definition across all the cloud providers.
That's a good point, because when you're logging into one of these tools, you're logging in from a perspective of either something's gone wrong and you're trying to identify, or you have a question you want an answer for. You don't want to go through a bunch of such search results to find out which one matches. And then to your point, we're back to a CSV export and trying to spot filter out over there.
You'll be shocked how many people still do that.
Well, I did that as well. Like, that's why I know exactly what goes into it. So I'm like, yeah, because the first couple of generations of CSPM did not even have that search. There was just more like, we're compliant or we're not compliant. So definitely, I remember those days, and I absolutely hated it. I remember following these YouTube channels on Excel. Now I know why there are so many YouTube channels dedicated for Excel. There's a reason for
it. And Excel supports 1 million rows now. So like when we grew up, it only did like I think 65,000 rows. That's but now it's 1 million rows. It's crazy good. It's crazy.
So it's gone beyond. I thought 65,000 was still the limit on the number of rows.
No, it's more than 1 million now. It's crazy.
1 million rows in an Excel sheet.
Yeah.
Oh wow, we've pushed Excel to new boundaries now. I wanted to give audience another perspective of, so we spoke about the code example, we spoke about the playbook examples between on-premise and the new world. We spoke about the cloud agnostic elements as well and how we prefer cloud native. In terms of the maturity scale, I think that's probably where, you use the example of Netflix earlier, where they have like a developer experience stream. Where do you see, for people who maybe starting the journey today and maybe are in the verge of starting their first cloud security architect job, would you say outside of the whole learn a language to be successful, focus on the business and develop experience, what are some of the things from a maturity scale perspective? What would be like a stage one where you say, these are the 3-4 things that you should take off as, hey, I have audit trail, so CloudTrail is good. I have logging monitoring, blah, blah. And how would you mature that to super advanced Netflix level kind of a thing?
So I think the first thing I would say is go write a Hello World app, web app, and deploy it. Deploy it on an EC2. Deploy it on a Lambda, deploy it on ECS or EKS as a container. Maybe have a backend database, right? So phase 2 will be like create a database, right? Yeah. And then understand how to troubleshoot it, understand how you deploy it, understand, like if you just try to deploy one web app on an EC2 without anyone around you, you are going to learn so much. You can start out lazy. First, do it with a web console, like click and get a server, SSH into it, copy your damn files. Then step 2 is like, let me try to write it as a CloudFormation template. Then step 3, let me try to write the whole same thing as a Terraform IAC template, right? if you're not hands-on as a cloud security architect, you are doing a disservice, not just to yourself, but to everyone you support. And then just, as new tech comes out, just take that same Hello World app and deploy it. So like Amazon just released, I think, App Runner, which is the latest thing. As our famous Corey Quinn on Twitter says, like, there are 16 ways of running a container in Amazon. So have you tried all 16 ways?
Yeah, fair enough. And to your point then, because the reason I also laughed is because the first time I tried building an EC2 instance from a console, every stage there's a question you're asking. Like even what instance type am I picking? What RAM? Why am I picking this RAM? Or is it free tier, not free tier? There's so many questions at every stage of just building a regular app. Doesn't have to be like the sophisticated enterprise app, just a regular app.
And if you did that in your personal account, good for you, right? It worked. You try to do it in any corporate account, you will fail because the SGs are predefined. You can't create an SG, right? The VPCs are predefined. You can't do that. And so that's why I keep telling people, I'm like, the first thing you do when you walk into any new company, try to deploy a Hello World app, just maybe intranet corporate facing, and then step 2 would be internet facing. You will learn everything there is to know about the entire company.
That's a good point. And who to talk to as well to get your work going as well. I think that's pretty good. Good advice. So what would you say is like the advanced stage? Because if that's the step 1, then what's on the other end of that scale for maturity? Like people may be already doing this and know. How would you define
the ultimate maturity? I tell people is like, because I heard this awesome story of intern starting at Google. Okay, day 4 they push code to production. Day 4. Okay?
An intern.
An intern, right? Wow. So that's my benchmark. And this is what companies should strive for. What is the DevEx experience? And when you get someone new coming into your company, how fast can they deploy code to production? Your goal as a CIO should be to get that timeline from months to weeks to the Google gold standard of a week. That is the level of tooling.
Yeah, wow.
Day 4, if you get your Mac working, day 4, they should be happy.
Yeah, I mean, how many people actually get laptops by day 4 as well? It's like that. I mean, in today's day and age.
I did. I was up and running on day 2, which was super impressive. I was shocked.
Wow.
I think at least in the US, COVID accelerated the whole ship to home thing.
Right, fair enough. Yeah, because I think during COVID, we had this thing where I was talking to one of the CISOs, and he had a team in one of the Asian countries, Indonesia somewhere. Yeah. And he just had to start people running, because I mean, being a third world country, there were a lot of homes where it was a shared computer. Like I think the employee was sharing computer with mom and dad, brother, sister, everyone on the same computer. And you cannot get a laptop to them until like a month later. And you're like, well, you have to start work because we're paying the person a month advance. What do we do? I mean, we've come a long way, but I think it's a really good benchmark to go for. Like day 4, if you can aim for like someone to be able to understand the system and go into production, that's definitely a good benchmark. And where can people learn about being a cloud security architect? Because I feel like there is this notion of a lot of industry people would say that, and I kind of agree with it, that you need experience in IT of some sort to become a cloud security architect as well. And in terms of having the basic foundational piece of networking, identity access management, like at least knowing what they are. And it's not just about getting a certificate and, you're a cloud security architect. No matter how new the world is, the foundational pieces have not changed. Would you agree? Or would you say it's actually anyone starting today from straight out of university or college can go straight into becoming a cloud security architect?
I think security architecture in term is kind of specialization, and it's your experience that counts. And I think as you start doing more work by year 2, year 3, you'll get there. It's going to be an organic journey. The best suggestion I would give to people is go read Medium, Netflix engineering blog, you take the top 10 product companies that you use, right? Or consumer products or tech products. Almost all of them have good engineering blogs. Go read them, right? End to end, go read them, try to understand what they're saying, and then try to figure out how you can either incorporate pieces of it or figure out, can you build something parallel? I think if you just did that, like read. People need to be curious and read. And then try. Like the nice thing with cloud is you can't fail. It's a server. Like worst thing is it's not going to come and eat you up. Like or it just maybe cost you $5 and then you go kill it. So I think as people need to learn The biggest thing I think companies need to do this too. They need to change their corporate culture to allow for experimentation and failure. I think that's, like this whole notion of blameless, which just came out last few years, is awesome. Like, I'm not going to figure out root cause, because root cause is not because of a human. It's because of a process problem. It's always a process problem. Like the process didn't take into account something.
Yeah.
And I think once you do that, I think everyone will be successful.
That's pretty good advice as well. And to your point then, would you still say anyone can pick that up without foundational pieces? Like kind of the cloud security role, anyone can pick that up. So if I were to just do just reset my life, I guess, in a way, and just do cloud certifications and hopefully something in the foundational pieces of your IT networking and IAM stuff as well, I should be able to get into either a cloud security engineer or a cloud security architect role.
So you're talking the wrong person. Yeah. So I hate certifications. Like I'm like completely anti-certifications. There's a task, go do it. Go figure it out and come back, and then I'll poke holes at it. And so I think the best piece of advice I would give is try to find a good mentor who can guide you right along the way, and then read Twitter. There are amazing people on Twitter, on Amazon, and you just follow a handful of them. You will learn a ton about Amazon, more so than even the Amazon documentation. But I think the best way to learn is try. Like as you said, right? It took you forever to deploy a Hello World app. But guess what? You learned IAM, you learned how to debug, you learn how CloudTrail works, like all these things. And certifications don't do that. Certifications are like if you're book smart, you're awesome. And like I'm not book smart. I be honest, I'm not a multi-choice answer kind of guy. And I learned. And so every time I've done a project, I've learned more. So.
Cool. Well, that's kind of most of the questions that I had for the interview. I've got a fun section towards the end as well, which has got 3 questions just to get to know you a bit more outside of the whole technical aspect of it. But the first question being, what do you spend most time on when you're not working on cloud or technology?
Oh, so unfortunately, my hobby is reading a lot on tech. So I tend to suck in a ton of information. So my go-to is Hacker News. So news.ycombinator.com.
Yeah.
First 3 pages every day, like religion, and then just randomly click on articles and then deep read them. And then maybe an hour or more on Twitter. Right?
Fair enough.
Outside of that, biking, and then once or twice a year, kiteboarding. I'm getting into kiteboarding a lot. Yeah.
Cool. Good sport to be in as well. Wait, so talking about Twitter, what is something that you're proud of but is not on your social media? Could be anything, personal, professional.
I went to cooking school for 3 months.
You went to cooking school?
Yeah.
Wow. Wait, what kind of cooking school? Like Japanese, like Indian? What kind
No, it was just basic building blocks.
Basic culinary skills.
Basic culinary skills. So I used to be a good cook, and I wanted to improve my technical skills. So I'm like, let me go. And so learned a ton. Learned a ton. Yeah.
And final question, what's your favorite cuisine or restaurant that you can share?
Oh man, that's a tough cookie. I would say sushi and Oga's in the Boston area. There's a place called Oga's in Natick.
Yeah.
He's my go-to.
I was surprised how many Japanese restaurants are in Boston as well, by the way. Like really good Japanese food in Boston. But thank you so much for sharing that. Where can people find you if they have any more questions and want to question their first principle beliefs of cloud?
Sure. So Ashish this Logmaster on LinkedIn and Ashish Logmaster on Twitter.
Sweet. I'll put that in the show notes as well. I really enjoyed our conversation of almost like an online versus reality and what it used to be versus what we are at. So thank you so much for doing this. And I think everyone else also enjoyed it. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you, Ashish. And I'm glad I had another Ashish on the show as well. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks, man. Peace. Take care. Bye. Yeah, bye.